Hey, what is up, guys? Klassen here, and welcome to my podcast. Today we're going to talk about depression, why we need it, and why we have it. Depression, okay, so this can go in a lot of different ways because depression is, we've all felt depressed. Some of us are stuck in depression, some of us, well, we've all experienced it. And I think it's important that we understand why we have it and what it means for us in our lives, what depression can do for us, and what the impact it has on our lives. So before we get into anything, I just want to get this out of the way that there is depression that is natural, that is good for everybody, that everyone experiences, and then there is clinical depression, and as depression is normal and everyone feels it, there's also clinical depression, which is has to do with like chemical imbalances and hormones, and you can get diagnosed with it, and in that case, medication can help you. So I want to separate what everyone experiences in the natural progression of life and a serious mental illness. So I'm not in this subject making lightly anything of anyone who's suffering from serious kinds of depression or suicidal thoughts or anything like that. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. So yeah, depression. Why do we have it and why do we need it? So you'll notice kind of a running theme in my podcast that a lot of things overlap and a lot of things go hand in hand with other things. Depression often goes hand in hand with failure because we fail and we're depressed, we're sad about it. Or we often have depression after things end, right? Something good happens, it ends, people get depressed they get fired from a job, or their sports season ends, or they finish their show they're watching on Netflix, right? It's sometimes it comes at the end of things where sad things are over. Like I said, it can be the end of something really meaningful for you or the end of a show that you were really invested in, right? There's a broad scale, there's a broad range of depression and things that can make us depressed. But there's also depression can come from transitioning, sorry, and that's the biggest, I think, state that a lot of us get stuck in is the state of transition, and we get depressed and we don't realize that we're actually in a state of transition, and we all get stuck in it, and we wallow in our depression, and we don't grow from it, and we don't recognize it for what it is, and we get stuck. So I would say transition for sure is one of the biggest causes of depression, next to things ending. For me, I notice that when I'm transitioning, because I know that I'll get depressed. I'll know at the end of my football season I'm gonna get depressed. I'll know, at the end of summer, or like I can kind of predict, right? Especially if your years kind of look the same, that you can kind of predict when it's coming and how you're going to react, and that comes with being self-aware. I talked about that in my last podcast. You only can really get to that stage if you are self-aware of when, like knowing when you're going to get depressed, kind of like knowing when you're going to fail and how you're going to respond to being fail or responding to your own failure. Depression is the same thing. So I know personally, like when I go through transition stages in my life, like it starts even as early as like when you're a kid and like summer's ending and school starting. You're depressed. You're in a transitional stage, and it sucks, right? Because the unknown is coming. You're going from elementary to junior high, and it's unknown, and you're scared, and you get depressed. Junior high to high school, right? Those are probably the earliest like times in your life when you know the future is unknown, and you know that you're going to have to adapt, and it's scary. And that transition period can be really difficult for people to handle, because it's really hard when you don't know what's coming in the future. Like leaving, after high school, if you go to university, like after university, like what are you gonna do? You've been in this cycle of going to classes for so long, or like you're about to start a new job, and it's scary because you've been in the same routine for so long, and you're really good at what you do, and you don't know how you're gonna handle it. Oftentimes you get depressed, and I think that's a part of transitions. When you're going to experience something new, it's in something unknown, and your body's trying to keep you in the known. And you transition, you go through that really rough patch of like not knowing where you're going, not feeling safe, feeling insecure, losing sleep the night before an exam. I think, that depression is just something that we all feel, and it can be really, normal, and you can expect it, and you can prepare for it. I know, like, I'll tell Brianna, like, my wife, if, like, my football season's ending, I know that I'm going to be depressed for the next couple of weeks, or it's playoffs, and I'll be like, well, if I win this game, we're going to party, and we're going to practice next week, and if we lose this game, I'm probably going to be depressed for the next couple of weeks, and I'm expecting it, and I'm prepared for it, I'm self-aware, and I'm just aware that that's what happens when you transition. That's also a part of failure, and that you need to go through those stages to grow. I think a lot of people suck at this because that transition period comes when they're at crossroads and they're in a place where they realize that they have to make a decision, they have to continue, they have to transition, and they get stuck at that crossroads and they get depressed, and they just accept that they're depressed and they just live in their depression. And they go day to day being depressed, and they get alcohol. Maybe they tell their closest people in their lives that they're depressed, and they don't ever kind of work to get through that. They're kind of like, oh, I'm depressed, I'm sad, my life kind of sucks right now, but you could be saying, like, I'm at crossroads right now, and I'm struggling to, make my next move, take my next step. And that really comes from getting stuck in that transition. Could also be deciphered as not having a purpose, being without purpose. If you have a lack of purpose, you'll find yourself in a place of depression, because your life won't feel like it's worth anything, like you're not working towards anything. So lack of purpose, I would say, is probably the next big reason for depression, and I think that's why our society is the way it is. I mean, in North America at least. Again, everything is kind of from a biased perspective of a North American, but I think our society is probably more depressed now than it ever has been. Like, people in their youth, it's common, like, to make jokes about, how things suck, or like, people make lightly of things like depression, and making things like, oh, this sucks, I'm gonna kill myself. Like you just hear more and more jokes, like, people are trying to figure out ways to interpret this and how to handle being depressed. And I've just noticed this as a student. I'm not making light of any kind of suicide or people that are struggling. Like, I've been there. I just know that it's almost so common that people don't know how to handle it, and humor has been a go-to, because it's how people are, young people are handling this depression. And some people respond to things differently. It's kind of just like the current state of controversy. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that people are more depressed now than ever, I think, because of that lack of purpose, and because I think there's a responsibility overload for people maybe currently in their 20s or 30s, or just anyone leaving high school now, because now more than ever, we've been in a good place. There hasn't been like any kind of war that's impacted North America. We've always left the country for war. It's never come to us. Like, a lot of generations before us all united together because of war, or because they had some greater purpose that all united us. And, that was the reason to live, to fight for your country, or to stand up for what you believe in. Maybe at one point, it was religious wars, or it was just fighting for your freedom, or something like that. But we've been in a really good place, and now our teenagers and young adults like myself, considered millennials, are growing up in this golden age of peace in North America, and we don't have that that purpose, handed to us growing up, that you are learning, you're not learning to work to go to work so you can provide for war anymore. We don't have to do that. We can pursue our own things and go in whatever direction we choose, and that's really hard because I'm only 22 and I'm lucky enough to have found my purpose early on in life, and I'm fulfilling that right now. I'm doing what I want to do, and I don't feel like I'm depressed because of a lack of purpose. But I know a lot of people, and I've heard of a lot of people, and I have friends who have friends, people who are depressed, and they're kind of spinning their tires in life. They don't know where they want to go. They don't know what they want to do. And while they're not actually transitioning from one thing to another, they kind of are, because maybe they've been in that transition state since they turned 18 or since they graduated high school. Just because they're not actively changing from one thing to another, their transition period's just lasting a really long time because they're stuck. They're stuck in their depression. And transitions happen to everybody. It's completely normal and healthy. And I think the more you pursue the things you want to pursue, and the more successful you want to be, people they get jobs in areas they want to be in, and they know when it's time to leave, and they know when it's time to move forward in life. People take risks and they go forward, and people who go through so many transitions to get where they want to be often experience this depression, and they know how to handle it because they're self-aware, and they've dealt with this kind of thing before. If you get stuck in your depression, you never get through it. It can be hard to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, right? I can predict my depression ahead of time, and I know how to handle it and how I get through it. But a lot of people get stuck, and then they don't end up ever getting through it. And they resort to medication or alcohol or things that aren't really helping them. It's just helping them cope with their emotions. And I get it. I grew up junior high and high school. I think I was almost in a constant state of depression. I know better than most what it feels like to be depressed. I was on antidepressants all through junior high. They didn't really help me. It was more psychological. I didn't really argue it. It's just parents wanted to help me out, and they didn't really know what to do. And I remember being on antidepressants, and I remember thinking remembering that I was on antidepressants made me more depressed. So while there can be a positive psychological effect from being on antidepressants, where you can think oh, I'm taking these things that aren't going to make me depressed, and that might be able to help you get out of your depression, just knowing that something is helping you. It can also have the opposite effect, right? If you're on antidepressants, it can make you more depressed because every single day you take a pill, you're reminded of the fact that you're depressed. And I'm not talking about people who have a severe mental illness, or they actually have a chemical imbalance in their body that they need to balance out with antidepressants. It's another story. I'm more talking about people who don't know how to cope with their depression, or don't realize that they're just in a transition state, and they're just trying to cope and coast through it and just hope things eventually get better. And the sad thing is that sometimes it doesn't. That coast doesn't work unless you catch a lucky break. And I think that's why we have the suicide rates that we do. Why I think there are more people depressed than ever, people without purpose. And I think that in general, a lot of young people have more responsibilities than generations before us. It's not so simple as just farming or getting food and living, or just raising kids. I think that with all the bills, the bills start coming as soon as you even turn 18, or you get a phone bill. And with the way that everything gets more expensive every year, with finances, and it's getting harder and harder to afford a house now more than ever, to afford rent, to afford anything. Things were more expensive, obviously, because of inflation, but even more so than that because of demand. and because of location, like things that weren't factors back in the day that are now. There's a lot more responsibility in bills, and I think, constant stresses that our people my age now have to deal with than ever. So I think that the state that our society is in, we're already going against the odds to live a happy life. And those are factors that don't necessarily help you, even if you, like, especially if you're in a transition stage. Like if you're transitioning from your parents' house to owning your own place, that's a really hard place to get through. And you might get stuck in that state of depression. So now I've talked a little bit about why people get depressed and what can cause it and how it impacts society and us and the way we think. And I want to talk a little bit more about how depression can help you and how it's normal and how it's healthy. So people are very seasonal. Humans are seasonal. We plan for the winter, we plan for the summer, the harvest in the fall, the spring, stuff like that. We've always been seasonal. That's how we clock our years. That's why January 1st means so much to everybody for no reason at all. We've always been very seasonal, and with seasons, we have transitions, right? One season is like the transition to the next one, right? Like every season is a transition into the next season. So just like that, people have seasons in their lives, right? They have their school year. They have the summer between school, or summer break between work, or winter break between work, or whatever it is. Everything in our years are broken up, and we count them. We count our years, we count our birthdays, we count everything, right? Everything is seasonal. So with seasons, you can expect there's going to be a winter with the summer, right? We can't have a winter without summer. We can't have a fall without spring. No matter where you are, whether you have snow or not, right? It's going to be cold one point of the year, it's going to be hot the other time of the year. And in that sense, you can prepare for when things are going to be rough, and you prepare for the good times, you prepare for the bad times. That's kind of that same perspective. You can take that and apply it to your life with what you're doing, like what's the winter part of your year, not just like seasonally, like outdoors, but like in your life, like what times are harder, what times are good, are better, and how can you prepare for, that there are things you want to achieve in the future, and how can you transition from where you are to where you want to be, and not even preparing for like the job that you want, but preparing for the transition from where you are to the job that you want. That's really hard. I know that, like, before I got married, two 22-year-olds getting married at a young age, like we didn't have any idea what we were doing. We were both moving out of our parents' place to moving in together. And that was like, I was still in school, we were both still working. It was just crazy. And we were both trying to figure out what to do because neither of us have any idea what we're doing. Like, talk about a transition period from the life you've always known into a new life. Not even just like, to top it all off, I was also going through transition with work, with jobs, plus this. So it was crazy. And I remember, like, obviously getting married and like marrying the person of your dreams and stuff like that. Like, it's very fun and there's a lot of love and excitement. But I remember being very depressed before the wedding, like, because I knew I was going to be ending some family traditions. I kind of felt a little bit guilty because I was kind of breaking up the family unit. And there was, very close to home, heart, emotional reasons why I was depressed. And I think it was normal and healthy, and that's, your parents get depressed when their kids get married and move out, like, everyone kind of gets hit by that transition because it's a shock to your system. It's a shock to the norm. And yeah, I remember being depressed, and I remember thinking, like, why should I be depressed? I should be pumped and excited. And while I was, the depression was there. And I experienced that after I got married. And it took a while for that to go away because I had to get through that transition period. Fortunately, I was aware that I was just in a transition period. And I mean, I can't imagine if you weren't self-aware and you got married and you're depressed after your wedding and you're like, what the hell? Like, I should be happy. I just got married. Like, what's going on? Did I marry the wrong person? Should I not get married? And obviously that wasn't the case. Like, I knew I was depressed because it was transition and it was hard on my body because it's used to one thing and I'm giving it another. Like, I was aware of that the whole time. I wasn't worried. I knew that it was just something I was going to get through, and I did, and it wasn't bad. But that's, on the subject of relationships, um, I think people have one bad experience and they're scared of love, or they find someone and things aren't immediately better like they predicted because you're going through a transition and you break up, or transitions happen in your relationship, like 5 months in, 6 months in, 1 year in. There's shifts, right? As you transition from one stage of your relationship to another, from like, there's little transitions like holding hands and hugging to kissing, and then to other things, and to like meeting the family. And like, there's a lot of little transitions, and they can be stressful, they can be suspenseful, they can be exciting. Our lives are essentially just series of transitions, and you can get stuck in any one of those stages in transitions and get stuck in that depression that comes with it. And I'm speaking right now from the perspective of relationships, and that you can get stuck in that stage of a bad relationship from your transition out of the relationship, and then you're in a transition period there from where you are, from being not single to not single. That's a transition in its own, and that can get you depressed. So from all my examples now, you're aware that depression can hit you really at any time from anything. So if you're not aware of the fact that a lot of things can make you depressed, you might really struggle in this life. And you might struggle through a lot of different areas in your life, because that, those transition periods are going to be there. And, with transitions, there's depression, but there's the other end of that depression, right? There's growth. You can't feel like that satisfaction and that fulfillment of like the other end of that transition if you don't go through the depression, right? It's just like the summer and the winter, the light and the dark. You can't have summer all year or the planet would burn up. You can't have winter all year or the planet would just freeze up and die, right? You need that balance. You only appreciate the good things in your life if you've experienced bad things, right? That's why we can't have this perfect state of utopia and everyone's happy, because no one is going to know what happy is, or that they're happy if they don't know what being sad is or what being mad is. There's a balance. And, you need that pain and that suffering, and you need to make mistakes. You need to have that cultivation of soil before you can plant a seed, right? You can't plant a seed in soil that hasn't been cultivated. That's just hard earth, right? There has to be that breakup. There has to be that teardown before you can build up again. There needs to be the breakdown before you can come back stronger. In your cities, in your towns, you need to tear down those old buildings. And while they can seem like historical, timeless pieces of history, and like old buildings in the city, you don't want to tear down, but you tear them down, and then you build back a new building, and you build one that's like, state of the art, has all the latest features, the things the old building couldn't possibly have had, but you needed to destroy the old one. And like, people go gather around old buildings and watch them get torn down because they had some significance in the city, but something new comes along, and that new building, that new structure, built bigger and better and tougher with all the latest features. Sometimes that teardown, that breakdown has to be there for the build up. The same thing, with hormones, the way our bodies are. In the morning, we're catabolic. Our hormones, our system is in a state of breakdown. It's when we break down food the best. And then, later in the day, when the sun starts to set, we're anabolic. We go into rest mode. We don't break food down as well. When the sun rises, our bodies act a certain way. When the sun sets, they act another way. So if you want to have that growth and that fulfillment and that success, you need to experience the other side of it. You need to cultivate the soil in your life before you can grow from it. So sometimes that cultivation is school, right? Getting your butt kicked by profs for 5 years and then graduating, and then you get to experience the rewards. You have to go through a bunch of bad relationships before you find the one that you marry, right? You need to experience that heartbreak. You need to get your heart stepped on. If you have one bad relationship, you never take a risk again. Have fun being, feeling sorry for yourself and being in a state of depression for the rest of your life. You've experienced the cultivation, but then you never got the reward, right? If you're feeling sad and depressed, something is going to come out of that. You're going to grow from that, and sometimes that's the only, positive spin you can get out of such horrible things in the world, like people being taken by cancer and disease and death. Sometimes people pull positives out of death because it changes them. It changes their outlook on life. You hear a lot of successful people talking about how they got to the way that they did, where they are, because their dad died, and their dad meant a lot to them, and they were being bums, and they weren't doing anything, and they were smoking weed, and they were just being lazy in general, and then boom, someone dies, changes your life. There's the breakdown and then the build up. You experience that really bad relationship, the one that really broke your heart, the one that really destroyed you. And then from that, you learned, what kind of person you want. I know personally, I went through a really horrible relationship. And that was the one that was, left me at my lowest. I honestly thought that I would never love again. Heart destroyed, I didn't think I could ever love again. Because I was treated so horribly, and I got stabbed in the back, and it left me destroyed. And because of that, and other bad relationships in my life, I learned what I wanted. I learned from my experience, from all those bad experiences. I learned the kind of person that I want to be with. I learned the features and the qualities of the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with. And that experience, that knowledge, that wisdom came from me getting my butt kicked by life, getting a complete teardown of the system, complete breakdown. That's when I was able to build myself back up. And I learned a lot from that experience. And things like heartbreak and death and disease, can cause depression and leave you in a state of hopelessness and thinking, what good can come from this? What, the horrible things that have happened in the world have, a dynamic reaction, and a lot of positive can be born from it. So, this is just me trying to make sense of, a lot of horrible things that can happen in the world. There's the little things I understand, like failing a test and that failure leaving you depressed, and then that being motivation for you to study harder for the next one. That's real. You can see it. It makes sense. Well, obviously there are horrible, terrible things that can happen in this world that can leave you depressed, and it's harder to pull a positive out of it, and it's harder to see the growth in it. And that growth sometimes comes, years ahead. Sometimes it takes you a long time to get out of that rut and pull yourself together. And some people write books, or they talk about their story, or they only come forward with their story years later. And it has a ripple effect on other people who went through that same thing. And they learn from you, and they grow from you as well. So the running theme here is that there needs to be that down before there can be an up. Depression can ultimately leave you stronger at the end. Man, the amount of people that I've talked to that worked out or started working out, you ask them what got you into the gym? What started this for you? And they say heartbreak, One girl left you for someone hotter, someone more built. That's motivation to get in the gym, right? Lots of people. That's probably one of the number one reasons people get healthy and fit, is because of a bad relationship, or because they're trying to make themselves more, aesthetically pleasing for, you know, other people, to meet new people. And that's because you've experienced that low. You've experienced that feeling of worthlessness, hopelessness, but you come out of it stronger. And I think all the negative experiences that I've had in my life, and the fact that I was depressed through junior high and high school, and that I had all these bad relationships, made me who I am today. And do I regret those bad relationships? Yeah, in hindsight, I wish I wouldn't have had to suffer so much, but so much good came out of it. I learned so much so young in my life because I was willing to experience a lot of things, and I experienced a lot of failure, and through experiences, bad or good, you get a little bit wiser, you get a little bit more knowledge. And if you experience a lot of depression, you're going to get a lot of experience on how you've handled coming out of depression. The tools you learn, the things that you've gathered along the way. There has to be that balance of breakdown and build up. Positive and negative, catabolic, anabolic. Breakdown, build up will leave you stronger at the end. It's the simple principle. Break down, build up. It's how our muscles work. We go to the gym, we break our muscles down. That's what you do. You go to the gym, you work against resistance, and the muscle fibers that make your muscles move, you push them so hard that they tear and they rip. And then your body releases endorphins so that you don't feel the pain that your muscles are in, because you literally are tearing them. That is what we do when we go to the gym and work out. We tear our bodies apart. We feel endorphins to mask the pain. You're sore the next day, and because the endorphins were out, and then you do it again and again and again, and your muscles tear and they break down, and you're sore and you're hurting, and you think, I'm never going to go to the gym and do squats again in my life. But then they recover and they build back stronger and stronger and stronger. And the more you go through that breakdown, the tougher your body gets, the stronger your nervous system gets, the bigger your muscles get. It's the same principle that applies to life. You try all these experiences, you get torn down, you get broken up, same as your muscles. And the more that you do that, you experience that breakdown, the more you experience the build up. It's a cycle. It's a natural cycle, and it has to happen. This is a balanced universe, and if you do things that suck, there is going to be a positive. It's a guarantee that in some way you will get knowledge and experience and wisdom, and you'll grow from it. It's the simple principle, death and rebirth, right? People die to their old selves, and they're born again as somebody new. Your body, it changes all its cells every year. So the person that you were a year ago literally does not exist anymore, because those cells have died and replaced themselves. Your bones, your skin, your eyeballs, they replace themselves every year. So you were literally dying and being reborn every single day. That's that's powerful. And people, they turn over new leaves. They go through drug addictions and whatever it is, and they get born again as a stronger person. And sometimes people just skate by and they coast by with mediocrity, and they accept the average, and they don't ever experience that low because they don't ever take risks, or they don't ever take a chance on themselves. They never experience that low. They just settle for their 9 to 5 job, being single, hooking up on the weekends through Tinder. They just accept mediocrity. They don't risk the low, and then they don't get to experience the high. That's why I'm grinding so hard right now while I'm young, is because I know that there has to be a positive reaction. If I work so hard now while I'm young, and I put in the time, and I don't spend every single day partying and wasting my youth, I'm going to grow from it, and I'm going to get success and rewards and achieve my dreams, and it's just, I understand the way the universe works, and the law of attraction, and the balance that there is, reaping what you sow. I learned at a young age work ethic, and what it means to gain when gain what you work for, earn what you work for. That's simple principle of break down, build up. And that's kind of how I want to tie this whole video together. I've gone a lot of different directions here with work, school, relationships, suicide, death. You can kind of tie it all together under this blanket of depression. And if you're feeling depressed right now, just know that there is hope for you, because you might be just going through a transitional period. Your transitional period might look like grade 8 sucks, can't wait for grade 9. It can be my parents don't understand me. It can be my boss sucks and I'm going to find a new job. It can be you hate your routine. Man, you hate the cereal you bought so much, you can't wait for the next one, but you're grinding through this one. It can be whatever, just know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you just might not see it yet, Just you don't always see the end result. You just see what's happening, what's current, what you're feeling now. And it's easy to just get stuck in that. And, depression is probably, for me at least, it's the easiest way to feel yourself, to feel, emotions. And it's easy to stuff down when things are good. When things are bad, it's easy to stuff it down. But to sometimes just to give in to like feeling depressed and not being strong and getting through it. And, taking it one day at a time and always working forward. It's easier to not think positive and work towards your future. It's easier just to give up and sink into your depression and accept life for the way it is. And I think that it is a damn shame and a waste if you accept your life for what it is because you're in a transition period. You're in a stage in your life where you're going from one to the next and you give up because it's hard and it looks scary and it's unknown and it's a really hard place to be in. That's not the place you want to give up in. That's going to suck. You're not going to last long in this life. Your heart's going to give out on you before you reach 60 because your life's going to suck and your body's, what are we fighting for, So you just got to get through it, through those rough patches, prepare for your depression when it comes. Start being a little more self-aware of your feelings and ask yourself right now, am I in a transition period between one thing to another? Does it scare me? Is that why I'm depressed? Does my relationship suck? And do I not even know it yet, but am I transitioning out of this relationship? Am I about to start another one with someone else? Am I on my way out of one job and into another one? You just don't know that yet. So I would encourage you, if you're listening to this, to try to be a little more self-aware to your feelings so that you can plan on your depression. And if you are depressed, don't just give into it and be consumed by it. Plan for that growth that's coming out of it. Think, what can I learn from this? How am I going to avoid this in the future? Because you don't want to aim for depression. You don't want to do things that are going to make you depressed. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. The point I'm trying to make is that you should be prepared to be depressed if you fail or if things suck or they don't work out the way you do. I'm not saying there's always depression in transitions. Sometimes transitions go very smoothly. Things go very well. Things go without a hitch. That's possible. I'm not saying depression is inevitable in every single transition in your life. You're going to be depressed. Sometimes things go well for you, but sometimes things don't. And the point of this video is to not be consumed by it when it does happen. So that's where I want to leave this video today. I know I've been rambling for a while in different directions, so I hope you have got the general message of what I'm trying to get across here in this video. So, just to say it again, there are circumstances where you may be clinically depressed, you may need help. Suicide is not a place you ever want to be in. That can be really difficult when you can't even see the hope. You can't see any place of hope. That's another story, and that is something where meds might help you, or seeing somebody trained might help you. And if you are in that place, I encourage you to get help and to not give up, because even if you're in that place, there will be growth. Because if you're in a place of even like suicidal thoughts and you get through that, you could help a lot of people in that stage. You could potentially be a hero, someone who saves lives. That could be your job. You get through a really bad place once, and you spend the rest of your life getting people through bad places. You could save a lot of lives. Things might look bleak, like death is the only way, but man, imagine the impact you could have if you get through that and you help other people. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember that there is always build up after breakdown. It's just the natural order of life. It's how everything is. It's the balance in the universe. So, yeah, if you're in a bad place, it's going to get better. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this podcast, please leave a like and a comment. If you've had any thoughts, if you disagree with me or you want to share your own experience, please, I encourage you to do so in the comment section. And stay tuned for my next podcast. Klassen out.